I wanted to continue our discussion this week on art, and in this time I wanted to focus a little bit more on some specific aspects of art by examining what is beauty. Art and beauty have always been intricately linked, and we'll take a look at that today in a little bit more detail. And then later this week, we're going to take a look at propaganda and some of the elements of propaganda to break it down and develop a language to help identify some of the common elements of propaganda and develop a shared understanding. And whenever you're talking about something, it's important to have a common understanding, a common definition of it, so that we can all be on the same page and move forward and identify with it. But today I want to take a look at the idea of beauty and how it relates to the arts. Generally, beauty within the arts has generally been focused on connecting this with the visual reality, the external reference point. And I want to take a look at some philosophers and how they've defined beauty and how this relates to the arts. Plato said that beauty does not come from humans. It comes from the gods, meaning that the gods create what is beautiful, and all that human beings can do is imitate the origin, right? The original would be that of God, creating the universe, the world that we live in. And what humanity can do is just try to replicate that in some way, right? This aspiration for the ideal. And so we see this become, by and large, the rubric by which art has been judged. Whether it's good art or how good the art can be has been judged by how well it reflects the natural world or nature or representational art. And this gets back to the ideas that we discussed last time with Aristotle, that art should reflect the natural world, or Brian Regan says that that's a bowl of fruit. It should look like a bowl of fruit, right? So this is kind of the basic understanding of what art is. And we see with Michelangelo, he takes great care in trying to replicate the natural world, the soft curves of Mary's face as she's holding Jesus in her arms. We can see that it's just a delicate nose and delicate lips as she's kind of has her head cast down, in her face. The physiognomy, as it's called, right, the study of the face, is very gentle. She's not, freaking out about this, even though she's holding her dead son in her arms. She's kind of has this quiet acceptance of what has had to come to pass in order for the atonement to happen. As we take a look at the soft lines on Christ's face, with the delicate curls of his hair and even his mustache and goatee, we see that there's a kind of a delicate representation here on. It's almost as though Christ has this this kind of soft smile on his face, as though that in death this has been a release of the suffering. Trying to replicate emotions, trying to replicate the facial features that we see here with the forehead and the cheekbones and the nose, trying to replicate as much as possible the natural world, because that is God's creation. These shots here give a little bit more detail on the extreme care that Michelangelo went to in order to create this. We can see the indentation of Mary as she holds Jesus in her arms, the indentation of the cloth in her fingers. We can see the muscle, the biceps of Christ. We can see the spear wound in the side and the sunken chest cavity here with the rib cage, and then the sunken, the abdomen here, and then even the fingers, as we see, even the creases in the fingers are there. The fingernails, everything is taken to replicate the natural world. He even takes great care in focusing on the veins in the hands, and we can see the nail prints in his hands and in his feet, focusing on what the natural world sees, right? And this would be considered traditional beauty. We see similar ideas with Leonardo's Lady with an Ermine here, the same type of focus on trying to get the the hands, the neck, the jaw, and the cheekbones to look accurate, to look realistic, and that was what was considered beautiful. Again, we see this with Caravaggio, here with David and Goliath, extreme detail on the face of David holding the now head of Goliath. You even have the nice detail of the blood dripping down from the decapitated head. Or we even see this with Rembrandt as a study of himself and trying to understand his connection with the divine, trying to replicate the natural world. And this is not something that's necessarily new to the Renaissance and Baroque era. This is something that they did in antiquity as well. Here we see with the dying Gaul. Here's the soldier that is now dying in battle, and the focus here is on his sacrifice, his commitment, his duty to do his best to serve his country, or even this one with Constantine focusing on trying to represent the natural world. And so what we see within Michelangelo and with his Pieta, we see that he's trying to replicate Christ, trying to suggest that that is beauty, that is the ideal to aspire to. And what we see with these other images, these are human beings, but these human beings, the aspiration is to try to replicate the ideal form of human beings, to try to get us closer to God. This is how we should behave. It's not only modeling the physical natural world, but it's also modeling behavior, the idea of bravery and faith with David and Goliath here, and the introspection that we see of looking within to find our inner flaws, to improve so we can become closer to God, or the selflessness and sacrifice. That is something that is attributed to some type of ideal or aspiration. So it even transcends the idea of physical reality. It's a model of behavior. Beauty is in the behavior of aspiring to become better. And here we see the leader Constantine being immortalized within this sculpture to show that this is what ideal leaders should be like, right? So it's this aspiration for the ideal, both within the physical reality, but also within the behaviors that they're to emulate. Taking a look at another philosopher and his ideas on what beauty is. He suggests beauty is not divine created. It's a little bit different from that. He suggests that it's an individual construct. He says this. He says, beauty is truth and expression. Art is beautiful when it tells a story that deeply impacts the viewer. And so it's a little bit different from what we see with Plato, in that Plato's suggesting that beauty is beyond human influences, right? Human can emulate beauty, but really what they're trying to do is they're trying to get at the divine, right? God has already established the ideal of beauty, and what we're trying to do is mimic that in some way. And Lessing says something quite different. He suggests that it's about the viewer and how the viewer feels, how the viewer is motivated or influenced by a particular image or a particular story, a poem, right, or a particular work of art, whatever the case may be. It's how the viewer responds to it. So it's an emotional feeling, right? Beauty to him is an emotional feeling that the viewer is able to feel. With that, I wanted to share with you a short film done in Wellington, New Zealand, and a filmmaker took his camera when it started to snow one day and just filmed people interacting with the snow. And I just wanted to show you this. And I want you to think about, is it beautiful, right? What story, as we think about art is beautiful when it tells a story, what story is being told here? And is it impactful to you, right? Does it make the story beautiful? So we see within that is he's capturing the narrative of people interacting with snow, and I kind of feel myself as though I identify with the little boy in the coat with a grumpy look on his face, because that's kind of how I feel when it does snow. But as we think about this short film in relation to Lessings, did he capture beauty? Right? What beauty did he capture within the way that he captures this one event as he's telling a story, right? And so a thing to think about, right, is the snow beautiful? Is it beautiful to people in Wellington, New Zealand, who are experiencing this rare event? Evidently, it doesn't snow that often there, and so when they do see it, it's something very novel to them, right? And here's to kind of follow that up, right? Is snow beautiful in Rexburg in January when it's -10? And you have to walk across campus in 2 feet of snow. And at this point, we're probably wishing that we could do that, just so we can meet face to face and get out of self-isolation. But as we're interacting with snow on a day-to-day basis, is it still beautiful, or does it change, right? Does our interaction with change? So does it matter how often we interact with it that changes its beauty, right? And this is getting us to think a little bit about the differences between Plato's argument about beauty and Lessing's, because Plato suggests that beauty just exists, right? It's created by the gods, and it doesn't really matter about human beings. We can appreciate it, but it just exists, right? Lessing suggests that it's a little bit more complex, a little more nuanced in that it's about humans' interaction with it, and it will change according to how we do interact with it, or what story is being told. And so that leads into the third question: does the beauty of snow change depending upon the person experiencing it? Do humans control beauty, or does beauty exist beyond human experience? And so this is getting us to think a little bit more about the differences that we see between Plato and Lessing, and their assessment of beauty. Wanted to add one more philosopher to our discussion, and I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into these ideas, because these big shots of philosophy, although they can provide interesting starting points, they can be limited in their own kind of definition of it as well. And what Hume suggests is that beauty is an individual construct. He says that, quote, beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind which contemplates them. And each mind perceives a different beauty. And so what he suggests is he establishes this cliche of beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And so my question with that is, that's kind of what society pushes upon us. But the question that we need to kind of push forward with is, should we just accept platitudes and cliches, or should we dig deeper, right? Because this is generally when I ask people to define what is beauty, they generally say, well, something along the lines of Beauty is different for each person, and it's perceived differently. A very Humean argument that they make that it depends upon each person. And let's dig a little bit deeper with that concept. Right, here's a sunset in Florida. I want you to think, or sorry, in Florence, and I want you to think about whether this is beautiful. Right, this is to me, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. This looks today in the modern era, looks much like it did when Michelangelo and Leonardo were running around the streets. And it's pretty much kept the same kind of Renaissance medieval feel to it. And the best thing to do in Florence during the sunset is go get a gelato and watch the sunset. Right? I think most people would say that this is beautiful. Right? I think that most people would agree that this is beautiful. And so, if that's true, right? If most people are agreeing that this is beautiful, is it purely an individual experience? Is Hume right to suggest that beauty is in the eye of the beholder? If we all agree, then maybe there's more to it than just being merely in the eyes of the beholder. This is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. This is in Brock, Switzerland. And what Brock, Switzerland is known for is they are it's the headquarters for Nestle and Kaye chocolate. Switzerland is known for their chocolate, and this is kind of one of the major towns of chocolate production. It's just a very tiny village in the middle of the Alps, and the only way to get there is on what looks like one of those little tiny trains that you would put around a Christmas tree. I mean, it's the actual size, but it's kind of an old-fashioned train that gets you there. And this is the center of the town, and so you kind of get off at the train station, you walk through this area here, and then the entire town smells like chocolate. It smells just like the Celestial Kingdom would. And as you go through, so you can see over here, this is Nestle Chocolate Factory, and this is Kaye Chocolate, which this is a Swiss brand of chocolate. It's very difficult to find in the U.S., but it's really good. It's one of the best chocolates I've ever had. And as my wife and I went on a tour several years ago, we went through kind of the history of chocolate, and then we saw how it was made. And then at the very end, they had this huge, long table, probably about 20 feet long, filled with all the chocolate that they made there. And they said you can sample as much chocolate as you wanted. And so we found the Celestial Kingdom. It's apparently in Switzerland. But I think most people would agree that this is beautiful, right? The smell is beautiful. The look is beautiful. So is beauty in the eyes of the beholder, right? Is it just an individual experience? It might be more complicated at that. And if you take a look at this is some trash in Ghana. We'll talk a little bit more about this towards the end of the semester. We started to export all of our trash to Ghana because our landfills are filling up with our trash. And so now we're shipping it to Ghana and other places in Asia to pile up. And I think most people would agree that this is not beautiful, right? Most people would suggest that this is just kind of chaotic. It's not beautiful. Or these are some slums in Brazil. I think most people would agree that this is not beautiful. But what we have today is the inception of beauty, right? This idea of planting this idea of beauty in our minds, that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? What society is promoting. But there might be a little bit more nuanced insights that we can kind of dig deeper and find, right? The question is beauty truly in the eyes of the beholder, or is this an oversimplification? And the question that we can kind of consider, you might be thinking yourself, is what's all this talk about beauty? What's it really matter? Why do we have to dig deeper? Why can't we just say that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder and just leave it as is? And my response to that is threefold. Number one, some of you responded in your initial, the chats when I asked you, what do you hope to get out of this course? Some of you responded that I hope to be able to see how propaganda influences me, or I hope to be able to be more aware of the ideas that surround us and how what their effect is upon me. And so if we're going to do that, if we're going to be aware of how society influences us, we have to get used to digging deeper to find the origin, right? What's the true origin of the idea? So that's one way. And then number two, another idea to think about that beauty isn't as innocuous as we would think. It seems like it's kind of a mundane topic, but in reference to propaganda and the ideas that it's pushing onto us, it actually is a little bit more of a weighty topic when we think about that 3% of adolescents between 13 and 18 years old suffer from eating disorders. That 80% of these that are suffering from eating disorders are women. And 30 million people suffer from eating disorders in the US. 10 million of them are men, which means that 20 million of them are women. And 13% of women over the age of 50 suffer from eating disorders. And anorexia is the third most common chronic illness attributed to teens. And so the idea of beauty and where it comes from, where these ideas are originating, its influence upon us, how it's shaping the way that we see the world, right? The idea of inception isn't as simple and isn't as innocent as it tends to be, or as we tend to think that it is. And the third reason that I wanted to start this discussion with beauty is because it pertains so closely to art. Modern artists start to question the prevailing notions of beauty and where it originates, and the idea that it only originates from the divine, or it can only replicate what the divine has created. So to truly understand and appreciate modern art, we need to be able to understand what it's reacting to, these kind of older ideas. And for that, I do want to turn back to a Renaissance painter, Ghirlandaio, who was the teacher of Michelangelo. And in his Old Man and a Young Boy, what we see is just this kind of quiet, innocent, intimate interaction between an old man and a young boy. And the first thing that we notice, obviously, is the nose. And so the question that we would have is, why in the world would Ghirlandaio, who's trying to represent, as we mentioned before, with Michelangelo and Da Vinci, the focus of art was to create something that is beautiful, something that's ideal, something that's better than the aspirations of the average person. Why would he have an ugly nose? And he puts that ugly nose at the very center, right? Which is kind of focusing our attention at the very center of it. We have the lines that are directing us, the chin, right, and the line of the cloth kind of directing us towards the nose, and the eyes, the line of the sight of the young boy is directing us towards the nose, and so it does become the central focus. And I like this quote because it sums up of how we need to kind of push beyond just these superficial notions of beauty as we start to think about some of what society is pushing as beautiful that might be limited, right? That beauty is that society promotes is mainly, another cliche, skin deep. And if we push beyond to see that there are other elements, more complex elements of beauty, we can start to understand and appreciate true beauty rather than socially pushed ideas of beauty, which is leading to things, as I mentioned, like eating disorders. And here's a quote that sums this up quite nicely, and this comes from a talk by Professor Geddes, who used to teach in the art department here. He says, quote, "In the arts, there are often examples of great beauty, but they're not always pretty. Why would Ghirlandaio include something so obviously grotesque in this painting? Not only is this graphically ugly nose a dominant feature of the painting, it also happens to fall directly in line of sight between the old man and the young boy. As you examine this masterpiece, you come to realize that the beauty of the painting is because of, not in spite of, that ugly nose. We, the viewers, see it all too plainly. But the grandson, with his eyes fixed directly toward that ugly nose, sees beyond. He alone is oblivious. I suppose this painting is an example of what the Lord meant when he said we should become as little children, who are so loving and forgiving. This is an example of what is beautiful or lovely that goes much deeper than fleeting, superficial characteristics. And so as society promotes these kind of superficial characteristics, maybe there might be more to it. There might be more complexity to it. But part of this is I wanted us to think about where it comes from. And I wanted to get into a study done at UCLA by a plastic surgeon of all, and how he's trying to understand what is beautiful. And as you can imagine, as a plastic surgeon, beauty and how we define beauty is going to be quite important to him. And so he starts this study to see how human beings perceive beauty and where it comes from.
Hoping to find some clues to the rules which govern beauty, Stephen Marquardt went out and asked people who worked in the beauty industry.
So I just started canvassing different people that I knew in those industries, and it was pathetic. I couldn't believe it. Nobody knew what beauty was.
Nobody knew?
Nobody could understand it. Everybody had a different idea. Everybody had an opinion about what beauty was. And a lot of people's opinion was it's kind of an ethereal oneness with the universe, if you will. And when they told me ethereal oneness with the universe, it's like, hey, whoa, wait a minute. I'm a surgeon. That's not going to help me out. So I kept looking.
Stephen wanted to see if people could agree on anything about beauty, so he did his own study. He got photographs of 18 very different women, and then asked people from all over the world to say which they found more and less attractive.
We've had people rank these 18 faces according to what they thought was most attractive to least attractive. They found the faces up here most attractive. Then as he came down here, they found them less and less attractive until we get down this area, when they found them barely human-looking. Some of these patients were taken out of medical textbooks that were published years and years ago, and today no one would ever get this bad before they were treated. And these are all real people. They're all women between the ages of about 14 and 24 to 30. This is the entire range of human visual appearance of the faces, and we try to include everything in our study. And astoundingly, everybody in the world, within about 97%, ranked these 18 photographs exactly the same. We thought people from Asia would have a different concept. It was very consistent all through the world. It didn't make any difference whether somebody was 4 years old or 80 years old. They ranked them the same. It was just astounding.
What this study suggests is that there are some things we can all agree on, some universal rules of beauty. So what are some of these universal factors that hold true for all beauty? Let's start by looking at babies.
Babies seem to generally be considered very attractive. So I started studying babies' faces, and I wondered if there was an ideal face for a baby. And it turned out there is. There is an archetypal face, not only for the adult, but there is one for the infant, too.
But baby's beauty is quite different from adult beauty. This baby looks wrong, doesn't he? It's because he's got an adult face on a baby's body. For some reason, the medieval artist Giotto didn't give this face a baby's proportions. Babies judged attractive tend to have plump cheeks, rosebud lips, and enormous eyes, all scrunched up together in the center of the face. It's these proportions that release our protective instincts. Oh. It's that helpless, nurture-me look that men eventually learn is what makes babies attractive. What's certainly true is that good-looking babies often stay good-looking.
Out of earshot, I could hear people, the grown-ups saying, "Oh, he's very good-looking. He's just like his father. He's just like his mother."
When was that? When do you remember that?
I think I was probably 4, 5. You didn't understand it, but there was something about your look. There was something that was right about you.
Crystal's here today from Play.
Look at these teenagers. The baby face features, large eyes, rounded cheeks, and full lips are still judged attractive, but a lot's changed.
They become attractive in a different way, not in a parental nurturing way, but in a sexually attractive way for a mate.
When did you realize that you were beautiful?
I realized that other people thought I was beautiful. Around 13 or 14, I started noticing that the behavior of others around me changed.
So what we see within Marquardt's study here is he starts to question what is beauty? And in his study, he found that 97% of the people that he surveyed ranked the faces exactly the same, and so that starts to question that Hume idea that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? This just individual experience that is going to be different for every particular person. He suggests, in this particular study, he suggests that it's more biologically driven, right? That we have these innate characteristics that push certain features or desire certain features that we then can all agree upon. So it's a little bit more complex than just beauty in the eyes of the beholder. And I wanted to show you another clip that examines this idea a little bit more in detail. And so what you're going to see here are the 100 most beautiful faces of 2020. And I want you to think about, do they all have something in common, right? And his suggestion is that they all will all have plump cheeks, they'll all have big eyes and big lips, and they're all going to be kind of central in the face, right? So I want you to think about that in terms of this next video. I'm going to turn down the volume just a little bit so it's not so loud. So we're going to think about commonalities as we think about whether beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? That's the social construct. That's what it's pushing. But is that an oversimplification? And if it is, what is beauty and where does it come from? Big eyes, big lips, generally small nose, plump cheeks. And then the question is, does this support perhaps Plato's idea that beauty comes from the divine, right? A similar argument that we see in the UCLA study, that it's biological, right? If it's biological, could that just be then partially the divine? Or the origin coming from the divine? All looking the same standards. And then the question is, what does that mean, right? And again, as we push towards this ideal, right, what is the effect? Again, what I think to think about is, what is the effect of that on society as we're pushing this very limited, very narrow concept of what beauty is, while at the same time, right, kind of a double-edged sword, kind of talking out of both sides of the mouth, we suggest that it's all individual, but everyone has to fit this very narrow criteria, and this is what it should be, right? But it's up to every individual. So society's kind of talking from both sides, saying it's both an individual, it's up to everybody, while at the same time also suggesting that that it's not, right? That you have to follow these set criteria. I wanted to take a look at this just real briefly to examine another idea of beauty, and that's with the Eiffel Tower. Most people would argue that the Eiffel Tower is considered beautiful, but it wasn't always considered beautiful, right? This is kind of the ideal place where people go. I think it's the #1 tourist destination in the world, with several million people coming here each year. And it's generally considered this highly romantic place, but when it was first created in the later part of the 19th century, it was considered hideous. It was considered ugly. It was an abomination to the rest of the Paris cityscape, and because it was exposing all of its devices of construction, they considered it kind of naked architecture, if you will. And most people hated it. In fact, one very famous French writer considered it to be an abomination. But ironically, he would go and eat there every day. And someone once asked him, why? Why do you go eat there every day if you hate it so much? And the reason, he said, was because it's the only place in Paris that I can go where I don't have to look at it. And so it wasn't always considered beautiful, right? So as we think about, well, is beauty entirely biological, right? Is it entirely, right? Beauty inside the beholder, we can start to question that a little bit, but is it entirely just some innate force, or is it something else? And I wanted to kind of leave off with taking a look at one more philosopher and his ideas on what beauty is. And I just wanted to fast forward just a little bit here to this point right here. And I want you to think about what he adds to this ongoing discussion.
He has more to think with. If you show him a book on all kinds of fish, the more he sees, the broader his concepts. So the more books I look at on architecture, primitive and advanced, and concepts of other people, I extract from that. Your frame of reference is what you see. But if everybody had a pointed head, real sharp, and a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done to fit in with your culture. Otherwise, they run down the street and look at you and say, he's got a funny nose. There's no such thing as beauty. All that's made by man. There's a beautiful sunset. She's a beautiful woman. If everybody had horns, that would be beautiful to you.
And so he suggests it's a little bit more nuanced than that. He suggests that beauty is more of a social construct, right? That we create ideas of beauty, and as society changes, our notions of what is beautiful changes. And I want to just kind of go to this example here of Ugg boots that were considered ugly for a time until models, as we see here with Giselle, or actors like Jennifer Love Hewitt, started wearing them. Actors are mainly the ones that started wearing them as they were in their trailers, and they would walk in the mud from their trailer to the next shoot with the Ugg boots, and then the paparazzi caught photos of them wearing their Ugg boots, and all of a sudden they became very popular, right? So it suggests that beauty could be more of a social construct, that we impose ideas of what beauty is. And so just to leave off today, I wanted to just end with my understanding of beauty, and you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but just to kind of give you a sense of what beauty is, right? What I would argue, just kind of an oversimplified view of my definition, is that beauty is like Oreos, and it's not to suggest that Oreos are in and of themselves beautiful. I mean, they're fine, but it's kind of like this idea of going to. This is a picture that I took at Brolam's, and what you see with these Oreos is you have almost an infinite amount of choices that you could choose between Cinnabon Oreos, red velvet Oreos, chocolate Oreos, peanut butter, lemon, right, mega stuffed, mint, thin, right? You can have any number of Oreos that you can choose from. But in the end, they're all Oreos, right? So what we really have with when we talk about beauty is the illusion of choice. The idea that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder suggests that we have this infinite number to choose from, but when it gets down to it, the choice that we're making in our choice of beauty is pretty limited and confined to essentially the same type of cookie, right? As essentially all of these cookies are cookies with some type of cream filling, right? So society tells us what is beautiful, but the truth is that our choice is very limited, right? And so what we need to do as we push forward is we need to start questioning, right, what society is telling us, right? And one way that we can start questioning is we need to start questioning what society tells us is beautiful. And just to leave off with kind of a positive thought and a question, right? Is beauty in the eyes of the beholder? Is it in the eyes of the society? Or is it in the eyes of divine? And I just want to show you one of those sappy Dove commercials to end, to get us to think about where does beauty originate from and how do we really define it? And is there a way we can kind of move beyond the social restrictions of what beauty is?
It was my choice. And now I will question myself for the next few weeks, maybe months.
We had an option of 2 pathways to walk, and they led to 2 doorways. It was a bit confronting, actually, to be honest, to see these big signs and feeling like you had to choose and be self-conscious of how you perceive yourself and perhaps if it lines up with how the rest of the world perceives you.
I went through the average door.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I didn't even hesitate.
漂亮对我的概念来说，就是好像明星那种遥不可及的那种。我走的是一般。
Mas eu acho que é mais porque eu me arrependi da escolha, porque era diferente do que eu vivo, é diferente do que eu sou.
Am I choosing because of what's constantly bombarded at me? What I'm being told that I should accept? Or am I choosing because that's what I really believe?
I walked into that door with said average and I didn't feel really good after that. Because obviously I had rated myself average and nobody else. Todos os dias eu passo pela porta comum e ontem foi um dia único e eu optei por passar pelo bonita.
I wanted to go through the average door, but my mum just pulled me over to the bottom door.
It was quite a triumphant feeling. It was like telling the world, I think I'm beautiful.
I just wish more young women realized it.
要是再给我一次机会走那扇门的话，我觉得我应该会选很美的扇门。I think I would walk through the beautiful door. Acho que a porta bonita tá completamente aberta para mim.
Maybe I could walk in that door.
You can.
Next time I look in the mirror, I will see somebody really beautiful looking back at me.
Beautiful is a great word. So why not see what's on the other side of that?
So it's kind of sappy, and of course it does kind of oversimplify something very complex, because people that were choosing not to go through the beautiful door, maybe they were choosing not to go through that beautiful door because they didn't want to be considered vain, right? So it's a little bit more nuanced than what the video shows us. And I like that, though. My favorite one was the one who just saw both of the choices and decided to walk away. But what I like about this is this idea of what is our choice? What is in our power to choose, right? What are we accepting is our reality, and what influences the choices that we do make, right? And that's something that we need to start considering as we move forward, right? What are the influences to how we're perceiving the world? And we need to dig a little bit deeper to find the origin, to find a better understanding of what the choice is as we move forward and make our own choices and have that power to act for ourselves.